So today I will talk about the ongoing project, and I would like to tribute Olena Kononenko and Anatoly Melnichuk from Taras Shevchenko National University of Kyiv, with whom this work is going on. And I will be talking about emotional landscapes of wartime cities, about the rationale behind doing this kind of work, a bit about the methods, a bit about the implications, and in the end, I hope we'll have a discussion on these various themes. So yeah, I already announced partly the structure of my talk. I would like to start with emotions and studies of emotions in urban studies, urban research, and applied spheres such as urban development, urban design, then to talk a bit about the wartime city as a specific city, as a specific urban condition, then to address what it means to map emotions of a wartime city, to talk about basic concepts in our own research, to talk about the methods we use in our own research, which could be also used elsewhere, and to address the results of the ongoing project, mostly looking at the wartime Kyiv, to make conclusions based on empirics we have received so far, and also to ask some questions during the discussion, which we could continue together. So studying emotions in urban studies is not new, and actually I've been addressing urban emotions, emotional mapping of urban spaces for quite a long time already in my own career, but of course grounding on the previous studies, and I should say they are interdisciplinary. So you might have spotted already that I am linking my theoretical framework to urban planners, architects, at the same time to environmental psychologists and anthropologists and sociologists. It means that emotions are in the focus of the interest of this very diverse crowd, let's say, or very diverse group of researchers. For instance, Kevin Lynch, as an urban planner, was addressing emotions in his own project and research on the image of the city during mental mapping with citizens of the US cities, trying to decipher emotions as some triggers and factors which frame the legacy of the city, its imaginability. Environmental psychologists such as Ralph and Tuan, they were addressing emotional experiences linked with places, including place attachment and also emotional dimensions of place identities. And they were highlighting that emotional experiences are fundamental for place identity, sense of place, sense of belonging, and also that emotions are helping us to bond with places, to form topophilia, for example, love for place, or other types of bonds. Colin Ayad highlighted that actually this emotional dimension in our environmental cognition is evolutionary, and though we already transformed and our evolution has been so long, from the tribal people to the people of the cities, we still have them at the heart of how we perceive the environment around us. So actually, even in the most, let's say, sort of civilized hotspots of urban life, emotions still are at the core of how we perceive dangers or how we perceive attractions in the surrounding space. And it's quite important for the cities to keep the emotionality of urban life And Jan Gale, for example, as an architect, and Sedlow as an anthropologist, they address these emotional dimensions of urban life, highlighting that these emotional dimensions, they have to stay in public spaces. We have to understand the emotionality of public spaces, which can be actually a component of public life in general, of the politics of urban life, and at the same time, as architects, designers, or planners, we can actually try and, let's say, channel constructive or more positive emotions in what we are building in the cities. And certainly cities, they would be better if they are emotionally vibrant and emotionally diverse. So it doesn't mean that cities only have to be joyful or filled with joy. Certainly emotions are so different, and actually the more diverse they are, maybe more interesting it is. But of course, it depends on the emotional intensity. And I will address this in the next slide. So if we speak about happy cities and cities of well-being, we certainly speak about emotions, about emotional dimension of urban life. But when we come to specific cities, we have to be careful and maybe more specific in what we understand under emotions and under connection between emotions of people living in the cities and emotionality of the urban materialities. And here I would like to address a wartime city, or even the wartime city, as a specific urban condition. Recently, wartime cities have become very pronounced in the typology of the cities we work with as urban researchers, as urban planners. I address a diverse group of specialists. I don't make distinctions for now, because certainly we are now facing so many wars and so many military conflicts around the world that it becomes just pronounced to study a wartime city as something specific. And addressing some points in my slides, firstly, I would like to highlight that, like, following Graham, the modern wars are increasingly located within cities. So, like, cities are becoming the battlefields. So urban space is transformed, challenged, ruined, endangered, and at the same time surviving during the wars as such. So we have to pay attention how urban materialities, infrastructures, and also culture, urban culture, are coming into play within this context, because wars are more and more concentrating in urban environments. And certainly this makes a lot of difference for what the war brings in as its affects understanding that cities, for instance, are dense accumulations of people. Therefore, more and more people can be non-military, not connected with a military action or function. They can be disposed to the war, or that cities are interplace or networks of specific infrastructures, and how these infrastructures are facing military affect or challenge or danger is very much specific. And at the same time, urban culture can take interesting forms, interesting, maybe the wrong word, but like unexpected, surprising forms when facing the challenge and the risk of the war. The other thing to tell is that when the war enters the city, it actually enters a very complex landscape of places and place identities. So actually it disrupts the ecosystem of those places and place identities, which can be personal place identities, collective place identities. When those are disrupted, this becomes a major traumatic transformation for the sociality of the city. So the citizenry is such, different groups of citizens living in specific areas, or for example, those who are able to guard themselves, those who are not. And it comes to the personal level of microgroups, families, personal level. So this is like a nested reaction of the different social formations within the war context and within the context when different places are disrupted by the war. And certainly in this situation, we should expect as researchers that all of the places from like basic to extra, let's say, would be transformed. And under basic, I mean home place, and like extra would be some places we don't visit often in the cities, like places we visit like once a year for leisure or culture or whatever. Yes, but all of those are actually challenged, violated, disrupted. And this creates reaction, and this also creates challenges and need for resistance and doing something with this. And here I would like to mention the term of displacement. So war is actually like a fundamental displacement because it brings displacement to everything, to materiality of places, to the symbolism of the city as such, the city which was not treated as a battlefield, which was treated as a place for life, suddenly becomes something else. Displacement of social ties and networks because people have to move, they have to stop and transform their routines and so on. And it is important also to understand that the war brings the change into the everydayness and the routines of the city. So of course we can talk on larger scale, looking like from above, that the war military action has changed the map of the city. For example, some of the areas are so ruined or so violated they are not in use anymore, or some areas, for example, are occupied. But for me as a sociologist, it's important to look from below and from within, what is happening on the everyday life level, what is happening in how people act, like minute by minute, hour after hour, what is happening in their movements, in their perceptions of themselves when they stay in the city and even when they leave the city, because the city stays within the identity of a person, even if a person moves from the city, even from the country. What is going on in the city can still challenge and make this person emotional. Why do we need emotional mapping of a wartime city? Certainly there can be many answers, but for instance, we might be interested again in an interdisciplinary group of specialists in what is happening with places and urban spaces during the wartime. As mentioned already, emotional dimension is pretty much important for the idea or the concept or the phenomena of the place identity, and also sense of place, place attachment, place belonging, and other related concepts and phenomena. And following what is happening, what is changing, can make us interested in mapping the emotions or following the emotions related to those places. Either bad, well, certainly mostly associated with the war would be negative emotions, but at the same time, some positive or constructive or resilient emotions, those which make people go on, endure in the circumstances of the war. And this emotional aura of places, it can tell us a lot about the trauma, personal, collective, but also about these ideas of resistance or resilience, because places, they can be transformed certainly from within by the war factors, but they can also be transformed from, sorry, did I say from within? So I was meaning from outside by the war factors, but they can be also transformed from within if people are trying to keep their lives. Yes, so they might react effectively, and this can be a constructive reaction. And actually, the intensity of emotions is for sure very strong or very high during the wartime, because the wartime is something absolutely fundamental. It's a meta event which transforms all chains of life, all routines, all spatial logics, and so on. It is quite interesting to map emotions in the wartime city. Quite interesting, quite informative, and you can add adjectives to understand the resilience of human-place connections. For instance, war in Ukraine is now full-scale invasion phase of this war is now already there for so quite a lot of time. Yes, so many years, let's say. How do people actually stay in touch with their own ground, with their own cities? Not all people have left. There are so many people in the frontline cities. So what gives them resilience? What kinds of emotions they can create or attach to places or reconstruct can play a role in their resilience, and in the fact that they have to keep human-place connections, because living in the city is actually a spatial practice, a very diverse spatial practice of movement, practice of being in different places, and so on and so forth. It is also quite interesting how we can land wartime emotions into spatial form. So actually, when we speak about emotions, it might be something ephemeral, or some would say that they're like just inside our heart or in our head. But at the same time, we also know that collective emotions, they can trigger agency and action. And what is happening, and how can we actually put emotions into space? How can we see emotions in space? So this is an interesting task. So here we can apply and imply concepts such as emotional geographies or affective cartographies, and read the city space through those emotional narratives or emotional networks which appear during the war. Because we have to reread the city during the war, obviously. It's changing. And also looking not only at the period of the war itself, even if it's a longer period, but also looking at the period of the post-war reconstruction, we can say that as specialists, professionals, we can be interested in emotional cartographies. For instance, oh my God, I'm so sorry. This is my cat. As a mnemonic tool, so a map of meanings. So what does this space of the city mean after the war has ended? How we can address this absolutely transformed space, challenged, ruined, so traumatic, so painful, so sensitive, through which meanings, through which experiences. Emotional cartographies can do their own part in this addressing and also in designing, let's say, specific solutions for the post-war reconstruction. I will speed up a bit, I guess. So when it comes to our own work with Olena and Anatoly, whom I mentioned, I'm sorry, my cat decided that she has to be around me. What we operate is two basic concepts. There are more, but in terms of spatial emotions or spatial emotionality, these are two. These are emotional places. So places which the basic feature for them would be their emotionality. The idea that there is some emotion located somewhere in this place, not only social interactions, not only symbolisms, but some emotional experience or memory or emotional dimension of interactions. In this case, we understand places as relational phenomena following Doreen Massey, meaning that places can be constructed and reconstructed, interpreted and reinterpreted, performed, reperformed. And in this relationality, emotions and emotional experiences, and also affects, and also feelings, in a wider sense of this term, they are taking or having their own role, having their own part. But at the same time, we can say that there is some specific locale, some specific place which is associated with emotion, or maybe several emotions, and we can study it as through this emotional portfolio. But when we think about a larger scale of the city, for example, or the area of the city, a bigger area of the city, which contains many places, then we can say that we can address also an emotional landscape, which would be a continuity and a network of these emotional places. So it would have this spatial and topological and typological dimensions of emotionality. It will be larger spatial representation of the city through emotions. And we also consider emotional landscapes to be individual and collective, meaning that you, me, one person can have their own emotional landscape because we all have different places we use, we like, we remember in the city. At the same time, as a social group in the city or as citizens altogether, we might have collective, shared emotional places, and they can form as a network, a collective or shared emotional landscape. And what we are now doing in our research project together with Olena, Anatoly, and actually I would like also to highlight that students of the Faculty of Geography of the National University of Kyiv are also involved. So what we are doing now in terms of empirical investigation or research is that we are collecting different layers of emotional data, now focused mostly on the city of Kyiv, because Olena and Anatoly are citizens of Kyiv, and me, I am or I used to be a citizen of Kyiv during several years of my life. Initially, I am from Kharkiv. So as people who are very much involved with this specific city, we engaged together into a very interesting method of emotional mapping through narration. We started autoethnographic reflections together and also individually, discussing our experiences of Kyiv since the start of the full-scale invasion and in the ongoing process. And this narrative data is freely evolving, so we are not strictly moderating ourselves, but there are current topics such as places, our places, places important for our identity, such as places of basic and everyday use, or places which are meaningful in other ways, and their transformations during the wartime. So this gives us a narrative which is collective, but at the same time with individual dimensions, which is filled with emotional descriptions of places, and also filled with specific places we describe. So this method gives us the possibility to actually align our own researchers' bodies and minds. Use our senses and emotions, because we are feeling beings or emotional beings, with our academic reflective minds. And also what we are using as another method is participatory emotional mapping, which is quite a diverse method, or actually a bunch of methods. And in our case, we are using digital mapping with the public participation DRS system called Maptionnaire, which allows, or what it gives, how it functions is that it is actually a questionnaire put on the top of the map. So we are now collecting data about places which students and ourselves map as emotional on the map of Kyiv. And this gives us another layer of data, because these places are not only mapped, but they can be then categorized into different emotional types, and also participants describe, leave little comments what this place means emotionally for them. So we have narrative data as well. And combining this larger narrative data of our ethnographic reflection and this data, which is more rigid, but still on a wider group of people about emotional places with little commands to them, we can actually then, and what we did is we coded different types of places which recur in our narratives and narratives of our students, and analyzed, let's say, features, experiential features of these places, emotional features of these places, which are wartime specific. And now I will talk a bit about them. And Liliana, how much time do I have left?
About 10 minutes.
10 minutes. Okay. I will try to be brief. This typology is evolving, but at the same time, I guess, and I really am convinced as a researcher that what I am presenting now here is quite fundamental. So these types I'm presenting here, they are fundamental for the wartime city. So there might be more on the top of that. And we have defined 4 types of emotional places, so to say. And first of them, most obvious for the wartime situation maybe, are dangerous places or places of danger, which can be quite regular places, not dangerous at all before the war started, but which became or transformed into dangerous ones because of the wartime situation. For the city of Kyiv, for instance, these dangerous places and also areas, they are quite different. For instance, the city center as the area has become dangerous because it is targeted by the attacks of the enemy because of the administrative and other services. At the same time, some areas of the city were dangerous because of the first days of the full-scale invasion when Russian troops entered those parts and did what they did. So some parts were not that much penetrated or violated than others. So some parts of the city become associated with danger or past danger more than the others, and for different reasons. Some suburban areas are associated with danger not only, but at this point I'm talking about this because very specific violent events happened there. So it was not maybe only entrance of the troops, but also violent events. And I'm not talking about that because I guess you might know. Oh, I see that there are 2 photos. Sorry for this. Yeah, but yeah, I guess that the same photo can speak for this type. What is very crucial in the wartime city is that even the primary place, such as a home place, is no longer safe. It became dangerous. The fundamental item of the personal place identity and identity as such was violated, destructed. And this is crucial and, of course, very dangerous for the whole self or collective self, personal self. And at the same time, of course, there are attempts, let's say, to keep this safety. So what is specific for the wartime city situation is the intensity and these crucial changes in place identities, but at the same time also the ambiguities, because parallel to dangerous places, we can see and talk and feel safe places. We search for them, we look for them. And home, which here I talked of as a dangerous place, is still perceived as a type, as an ideal type, an archetype, as a safe place. Not all homes and home places are perceived as safe, but some are. Some are, and there are reasons for this. For instance, the pre-war memories of safety, the familiarity of the area, the presence of the known community of citizens or residents, better to say, of this house, of this area. Even understanding unique material defensive infrastructure of the home place or the house or the building. These are some of the quotes you can read yourself. And this safety as a type also expands to the places which were not there at the in the emotional landscape of people before. We are talking about the so-called known places, which were not known at all, or which were places of transit, such as the subway stations or the subway cars themselves. not known, such as shelters and basements of houses. People did not use them at all. But these known places, they reappear, or they actually transform into very meaningful emotional places of safety, temporary safety, but safety. They are associated with more safety, more protection. And what is quite important is that, anthropologically speaking, we are seeing homemaking practices in those known places. And to highlight this interesting interplay between the dangerous and the safe, dangerous and protected, is that dangerous places are protected to become safe or more safe. This is evident on the case of home. Home places are reclaimed back, transformed into more secure spaces, fortified. For example, on these illustrations, you see different DIY solutions for fortifying windows from the outside danger. And emotionally wise, this is a very important process of something safe becoming dangerous, but then reclaimed through protection actions and becoming safe, or at least somehow safe. Again, it's a transformation of the place through its emotionality. Another axis, and I'm remembering about time. So another axis we defined, it is important, emotional axis, is the link between two types, which are again intensifying with the war. Axis between the dignity or places of dignity and the places of trauma. As a case of place of dignity, or places associated with dignity, with symbolic perseverance, with resistance, with patriotism, collective identity, is this monument to Princess Olga at Mikhailivska Square. And you see the temporal transformation of this monument in terms of material and symbolic dimensions, and how it has been, let's say, cared for, protected, attended to by people. So very soon after the start of the full-scale invasion, the monuments began to be protected by different kinds of wooden frames or sand sacks. You see the middle picture, when the protected monument is actually appropriated symbolically with different symbolic codes, like the national colors or messages. So the monument is there, it's not visible, the protective frame is like around it, but it is a symbol that something very fragile and sacred is protected, and this surface becomes a surface for messaging the dignity, that the affect and self-emotion and self-consciousness of being there, being alive, standing for something important, protecting the monument, the idea of the country, and so on and so forth. And the monument is still transformed, and there are like military elements on the monument, and the figure of Olga as a feminine figure and a figure of a feminine ruler becomes quite symbolic. I have to say that before the wartime, it was like just a monument. Yeah, it was not that much visible in the material and in the emotional landscape. But with the war, with the wartime situation, it becomes a place of so many grassrooted practices targeted towards saving this item, which represents dignity and different dimensions of this dignity, from like personal, I am staying here in this city, to national, actually. the history of Ukraine, the cultural heritage of Ukraine, which is under attack, ruin, violation. I guess I won't stop, but maybe very briefly. There are places of dignity, for instance, such as Military Historical Museum, which are at the same time associated with strong, mostly negative feelings. So, for instance, museum commemorating military defense and military strength now is certainly a museum of dignity or a feeling dignified for the Ukrainian military forces, but at the same time, a place where the emotion of loss becomes obvious, or traumatic feelings that war brings losses. And this links me with the places of trauma. For instance, this very, very important and unique place, the central square in Kyiv, Maidan Nezalezhnosti, which has transformed also, not only, but also as one of place to commemorate trauma, to commemorate loss, the spontaneous memorial to the fallen soldiers, where each flag represents a loss, symbolizes a loss. At the same time, it is, of course, the commemoration of the fallen, which were standing for their country. So in a way, it's a balance between dignity and trauma. So again, this axis, it becomes more pronounced in the wartime city and intensified. And it's interesting that one can't exist without the other. The same as safety can't exist without the danger, or danger without feeling that something can be protected and saved. So, two conclusions. Through those empirical investigations using different methods and still collecting data, we now see that really the wartime city, in terms of emotional places, presents us a very, say, specific and pronounced typology. Safe places, dangerous places, places of dignity, places of trauma. I can also add here protected places, which is some part of the maybe subcomponent of the safe place. And also places which are transitional, ambiguous, so which can shift actually, and they can shift in an ongoing regime because the war brings ongoingly threats. So a safe, seemingly safe place can become unsafe very easily. Something which can be nurtured can be ruined. So it is very fragile, this sort of balance. So the places are coming to the second point. They are in becoming, in a not a good sense of not because of good positive factors, but because of very traumatic, very challenging factors of war. Still, we can say that this transformative and transformational nature of places is a very, very important, maybe also important to keep in mind for the post-war restoration. One place can evoke contradictory emotions. For example, a home can be felt as safe as dangerous at the same time. So it's quite intense, quite problematic for the self, but also it's interesting how people handle these contradictions. And we see that there are affective axes appearing in the wartime city. They are there in non-wartime city, but in the wartime city, they specifically become so intense, the axis of safety and danger and dignity and trauma. And through very briefly, I showed you some of the cases, but for sure, the wartime city situation creates a lot of incentives for emotional work invested into placemaking. So placemaking activities, they become some therapeutic acts to reclaim urban life, to reclaim the physical environment, and also urban culture. And we can say and talk we can talk about the restoration of emotional well-being of places after the war ends, because well-being of places, their coherence, their emotional integrity, their memory, actually becomes evident that it's quite important, not only well-being of people, but also well-being of places. We can also say that this human-place connection and its variations are examples of resilience, of urban resilience, grassrooted resilience, not only top down, but like bottom up. And that this reconstruction of meaning of places and also their materialities, they can be interpreted as establishing of emotional geographies of belonging, certainly which are disrupted by the war, as such as the belonging itself, the sense of place, the sense of self in place. But this work and placemaking activities, they can reconstruct those emotional geographies of belonging. And finalizing, we can talk now during that discussion how this emotional cartography of the wartime city can actually inform urban recovery, memory policies, politics, and other ideas of after-war restoration. What are the ethical and political implications of mapping wartime emotions? Because certainly this is not a very direct ethical terrain. There is a lot of sensitivity, a lot of trauma, which has to be treated very, very carefully in caring manner. And can emotional landscapes serve as some blueprints for reconciliation, for post-war restoration? Can we take them seriously, not only as architectural landscapes? So we're taking not only architectural landscapes or like urban grids as serious dimensions, but those invisible emotional landscapes. We can talk about this now, and I'll stop here. Yeah, thank you.